Hi YouTube and fellow guards, I'm Weatherbears. I run in Brighter Shores because I can't run in real life. Running is the main strategy I have used in Brighter Shores throughout early access and will continue to use in-game to make gold, in-game connections, and survive the murky waters between now and substantial multiplayer content. This will be the first video in a series of videos where I break down what is viable to run, chapter by chapter, skill by skill, item by item, step by step. So, what is running? Running is the act of using your own inventory to move someone else's inventory so that they can save the time of running to the storage rift or some other place. Some runs make more sense than others, some runs are more involved than others, but the basic math of it all is quite simple. There are spots on the map where players can benefit from having another player run to bank or sell for them for a time and trade the bulk of it in Chronopolis after the service. Currently, the Brighter Shores Wikipedia calculators operate with the variable actions per hour. In the coming months, I'll be standardizing how we as a community calculate and communicate about actions per hour, and I'll begin comparing the current meta routes against possible routes that include one or more runners in terms of actions per hour. For the person purchasing a running service, the worth of the service speaks for itself. More actions per hour equals more items, equals more XP, equals more KP per hour. This begs the question, why would someone else forego their own time and experience gains for someone else? The answer would be gold. Fistfuls and fistfuls of gold. I think the value of gold has been terribly overlooked, with many players gravitating towards XP and KP efficacy instead. I think that gold should start to become the main focus for many players. Gold turns into tool enchantments, gold turns into XP potions, gold turns into paying for runners to increase your own actions per hour, gold turns into whatever you need it to turn into, and having access to those XP buffs sooner as a low-level player and at higher quantities than a lone wolf can, due to the limitations of in-game profit making, is what makes running the next big strategy for new guild member players to make money in-game, and the next big step that Brighter Bears is taking to engage players across the entire milestone spectrum to get involved with our new events. After some thoughtful calculations with a player that I've had the pleasure to run a variety of experiments with, he anticipated that the cost of this service should equate to 50% the mid-price of all items traded at the end of service in Chronopolis. But there wasn't really any math to support this, so I started doing it myself. So far, the math indicates that midnight was pretty on point. To explain this math, I would need a whole other video, but if you're interested in seeing the data I used to get the 50% value, you can find it currently in my Twitch subscriber-only Discord, and otherwise you'll be able to catch it when I open up discussion on the Brighter Shores Wikipedia in the near future. In today's video, I will be covering Hopeport. In each skill, I will be breaking down the most viable bulk runs to do by analyzing the spacing between item node and storage rift. I'll be going in milestone unlock order for the most part, and I'll be skipping over non-viable runs to save for time so that any new player hitting guild member for the first time can hop right into any of these runs and start engaging the economy across the entire milestone spectrum. I'll also make mention of what's viable to do while running for circumstances when you're only running one or two people and have time between runs to do things for yourself. After all of this, I'll go into explaining how to orchestrate a multiplayer party farm of runners and gatherers to improve upon the existing solo KP beach loops so that you can try it with your friends or join one of our upcoming events over at the Brighter Bears Discord. Alright, so let's start breaking down foraging. I'll start with potatoes, and so the deal with potatoes is that if we place a runner here, an overgrown field at the door to Fallen Monument, effectively what we've done is we've placed a runner in a spot that the gatherer or the forager must always pass through with a full inventory, assuming that they never stop the loop. So there would be no reason for the runner, for example, to be placed here at this door, even though it it is closer to this storage rift over here, because that would disrupt the the loop that the gatherer is doing, and it ultimately doesn't matter as much for the runner's timing and efficiency to do the run. So when we are looking at options to do for farming for yourself on the side, I want to start to introduce the concept of the one room away rule. And basically, it just means that pretty much anything that is within one room distance from either the overgrown field or the fallen monument, like because your point is kind of like directly between the two of them, any of these that are about one room away are going to be what is viable to run on the side. And so a lot of that is going to be foraging things in this entire area, but you can also hop over to raise as an option. Using this same concept of putting a runner in the room closest to the storage rift in a spot where the forager has to go anyways, we can also see that this works for water lily should a runner be placed at the door to Overgrown Road here in Rebel Road, and as well for hogberries, there should be a runner placed at the door to Crater here in Fallen Monument. And again, for both of Water Lily and the hogberries, we're going to do the one room distance rule to apply to what you can do on the side again. However, it is actually technically possible to extend the run, like particularly for water lilies, to bank north in Wild Path, effectively switching what door that you stand at, moving through ghouls so that you can combat ghouls on the side of running water lilies. Due to the nature of the storage rift being on a path where you have to actually go around the step and then go up a step or two here to get to the storage rift. It is technically possible to do the trade faster, especially if you are doing multiple different things for Femur Shard. Um, I'd argue a runner like here in Stony Meadow, right on the easternmost node would be short but effective work. But the reality is that like the entirety of the northwest corner of the map here is really, really effective for running generally in foraging, despite this storage rift here in Wild Path. As you can see, Sharkjaw is going to have the most benefit from a runner in Stony Coast right here, and at the door to Scruffy Shoreline, because there's definitively like a whole room between the nodes and the storage rift. As with Femur Shards, I would also argue that doing a ram's horn along with a nettle would be an example of like two items that would be effective if done collected together with a runner placed in bone strewn path. This northwest corner is going to have that like same one room away rule applied to it whenever you're going to be looking at things that you're going to do on the side, but is also the more effective option if you're looking to try and side combat ghouls again in Collapse Hovels or Wasteland. Moving on to Wrack, Wrack is arguable considering it is in the same room as a storage rift, but technically that storage rift is on the other side of a lot of steps, which require animation times. So perhaps the actions per hour would technically increase, but how much is uncertain. Plus, the other thing about running Wrack here is that you can only really farm Wrack here. I think that going over to Ray Bay would be too far away for this particular run, considering how close together all of the Wrack here. But I am putting it on here because Grizz has asked me to do it a time or two, and I want to see what people think about it. Lastly, for foraging, I'm going to lump everything on this beach loop together because all of it is really great for running. Generally, you can set up a runner in Starfish Point, and that sometimes moves over to Jellyfish Landing or Seashell Seashore every so many loops, but it's going to entirely depend on what nodes your forager is focusing on. This is definitively a more complicated run that requires a lot more communication, so be prepared to have to use that one brain cell. I think this loop is best done in a party system, actually, so I'll be touching this particular area later on in this video. Alright, moving on to fishing. Fishing timers have been crazy buffed, but considering all fishing spots require you to at least step down into the water, if not move between rooms at times, fishing is a skill where running really shines. So, starting strong with a runner placed sort of towards the north side on either side of the bridge in the water so that fishers do not have to get out of the water. I think that sighting eel while running eel is a lot of movement to keep track of in the one room that gets in the way of essentially trading, essentially. So instead, I would suggest heading over to either periwinkle or wall plant for side running options. So moving towards the coast, bass is going to be our first viable run there with at least one room of separation between node room and rift room. I would suggest that the runner again be placed in the water near the door of Seashell Seashore, and that the fisher do their best to fish from west to east. Anything one room away again is going to be a good option. Something I will say now that we are on the coast is that fishing in the water can be really great as a runner, but you really need to have an understanding of exactly what node you need to be on and when you need to drop your own stack for the sake of being in the right place at the right time, and where you need to drop your stack to get back in the water or pick it up to bank it next. All of those things are a little bit more than beginner level, but the more that you do it, the easier it will be, and the more possible it will be to arrange that kind of setup. The deal with Flounder is that you actually cannot bank it, so instead of the runner going to bank in Sea Road, the arrangement would be that the runner would go to the fishmongerer at the frequently fresh fish stall over on Eel Street. There would be no trade at Kren at the end, and instead some sort of money arrangement would make sense. In the interest of transparency, the numbers on this are not currently complete. I have not personally done this kind of run, and I cannot say for certain whether the 50% rule would apply here in terms of payment. Cod and Gurnard are in the similar position where runners could place themselves in the water at the closest point to the doors to Ray Bay to run those items to this particular Ray Bay storage rift. The one rule away is going to apply to things that you can do on the side, but again, fishing in the water situation is going to apply to these two particular items as well. All right, moving up northwest again. The steps at Salmon Falls and disused path necessary for salmon farming indicates a similar but kind of like longer feel to what a run at Eel Street Bridge looks like. And the runner in this case would perhaps sit between the doors to these two rooms. Which one is entirely dependent on which direction you want to go. I think that perhaps the faster route is going to be this south room to go and to get to the storage rift. I would say please don't try to hurt yourself by trying to fish salmon at the exact same time you are trying to run Salmon, because that is entirely too much movement to keep track of. I would instead say that you should opt for bell plants, bone spikes, or ghouls. Sardines are special. They are very, very special. And to be transparent with you, they are in the same position as Flounder. They cannot be banked. This has not been tested. And so the run to Fishmongerer also only makes sense if the runner actually has the Hopeport Coastal Portal Stone unlocked. And so basically, you can choose to sit at the door to either Scruffy Shoreline or Stony Coast. It doesn't really matter what room you're in, because ultimately, this is basically the new Cabernet ore run from before Cobalt Cavern got a storage rift. If you know, you know. Essentially, the run involves teleporting from one of these rooms over to the Hopeport Garrison, and then going all the way down to the frequently fresh fish stall, and then teleporting back, and then running all the way back here. And that takes a lot of time. Because this does take so much time and so much running, I would suggest that instead of doing things on the side, that you instead opt for trying to see how many people that you can run Sardines for at once. That way you are minimizing the amount of downtime you have and maximizing your profits while doing this. And then we have Trout up here, way up in the north, in an obvious position to be viable for running, being a whole room away from the storage rift. And Trout is also something that you can co-op fish along with Sardines. So, you know, there's definitely opportunity to add more runners into the mix for all this. I would say that this location would actually be generally easier or more viable to fish on the side of your own running, but again, the one room distance is still going to apply here. Last but not least, I'm going to talk about Pufferfish running. Willhope Crossing, just on its own being so far from this storage rift in Town Square, would make it viable for a running operation. However, with the added mechanic of pufferfish boxes, I would argue that pufferfish farming would be made most efficient by adding in a runner to trade pufferfish boxes for a full inventory of pufferfish on the bridge or in the water. Because this is a more complicated run with more steps, and considering it's kind of in an odd location where eels and pufferfish aren't necessarily easy to gather on the side of running, I would actually recommend doing this service for at least 2 people at a time to minimize downtime and maximize profits. And then we have the chef running meta, but admittedly, running bulk items from Kevin to your bank to sell to other players in Chronopolis is the easiest and most accessible way to put a little bit more money in your pocket, because higher level players are willing to spend about 500 copper to about 2 silver per item, depending on what the item is. Rounding out our tour of Hopeport, last but not least, we have Alchemy, which again, I will admit, I have yet to reach milestone 2 and be able to test a running theory, but I'm going to go ahead and mention it for anyone out there who wants to go and try it. Huge credit to Midnight for expanding my brain on this one. Essentially, one alchemist would start their bounties and communicate to the runner what items they would need from the remedy reagents shelf, and the runner would be able to trade what the alchemist needs when they need it. This run requires immense attention to detail and communication, because the consequences of buying the wrong ingredient at the wrong time is being unable to use it at all. Furthermore, of course, a set of 2 foraging or botanist runners could be paid to work in the background for other resources for alchemy bounties as they come in. Okay, so this concept is a great segue, as I'm really excited to talk about party farming. I don't really see anyone else really trying to flesh out this concept, and as you can see, I've already hinted of larger operations such as with alchemy. Party farm is essentially any operation that is using more than one runner. The most important rule of party farming is going to be write down what you are collecting for everyone beforehand. You cannot see what milestone your items are in your bank inventory in Chronopolis. So it is incredibly important to write down exactly what items everyone is collecting so that they can be correctly traded back at the end of the service. The more organized you are, the easier it's going to be to make everything happen correctly the first time. The game does not make this easy for you. As I mentioned earlier in this video, all along the beach, from Pirate Hideout to East Beach, are a variety of items that players are either picking and choosing over, or specifically picking up everything to stack KP. These 4 rooms in particular, each have a ton of nodes. So there are 2 rooms with 6 nodes and 2 rooms with 7 nodes, and they are in extremely close proximity to each other. And so this is what is known as the solo KP beach run. And I really racked my brain trying to map out some kind of route that makes sense to do on my own to run players trying to KP this route. And no matter how you really math it, the point at which the gatherer has a full inventory changes from node to node and room to room, and is especially dependent on whether they're picking up things like Monument Jade or Limpet, or going out to get more kelp because that's where they're at. And then I realized that Monument Jade isn't even tradable. Essentially, what I would recommend is that there would be at least 1 person in Starfish Point, 1 person in Jellyfish Landing, and 1 person in Seashell Seashore. As people begin, whenever 1 person is done going through a room and they get to the next room, is whenever the next person would go. And so therefore, whenever a forager walks into this room and has a full inventory, let's say they're 2 away from having a full inventory, they walk into the room, they say the number 2, the runner then knows that on the second node that they go to, they are going to need to meet up with them to trade and bring it to the storage rift. And so then the gatherer keeps going, the runner comes back, maybe the next person is already there, and they have, 2, 3, 4, however many left, they meet them up, and the whole process starts again. Effectively, the same thing would be happening in Jellyfish Landing, the same thing would be happening in Seashell Seashore, so we wouldn't necessarily have to be keeping track of where everyone is going to land, because there will always be a runner in each and every room ready to pick up, run to the rift, no matter which one of these rooms that you're at. And what I suspect is that this will be faster than solo KP option. Currently, I am in the process of coordinating a group of people to run this experiment live on Twitch in the very near future. Together, over the course of the stream, we will coordinate 3 different runs. We are going to coordinate a run where we do not pick up Limpet, and we do not pick up Monument Jade. We are going to coordinate 1 run where we do pick up Limpet, and we are going to coordinate 1 run where we do pick up Monument Jade. Because there is no easily accessible counter for actions per hour, or ways to calculate actions per hour meaningfully across skills, this experiment is mainly going to preside on the already established notion that running does increase actions per hour, and we're hoping to see, what works, what doesn't, what feels viable, what feels worth the effort, and really push the limits of how many people can be involved in one operation at one time. Hopeport is one of the most lucrative and easily accessible running spots for new players in Brighter Shores that have just unlocked the guild member trading option. Just running for 1 person for any of these items kind of gives you an idea of how much time you might have to do your own fishing and foraging on the side as a runner, and how many people you can run at once. In my experience, I can handle about 3 or 4 people comfortably, as long as before the run I know which players are running what level items before starting. Running does require a certain level of communication. Here are some tips I can give you to start managing your own runs. First of all, run 1 hour at a time. and set a limit to how long you will agree to run for beforehand. Burnout is super real. Running takes a lot more attention than any other activity in Brighter Shores, especially the more people you involve in the run. Ask the person you are running for to send a signal in DMs when they are about 4 away from a full inventory. Depending on what you're running and how many people you're running for, you may need to ask to adjust that timer shorter or longer, but always ask for a signal, and a different signal from each person than you're running for at that. If you are an extremely new player, I would highly recommend counting in DMs the number of full inventories you have successfully taken at the moment after each trade. This will help you with understanding how much output is expected of you per hour, and also create a trustworthy name for yourself as you continue to show up and provide accurate numbers. New or old, I think all runners should be giving a running total on the hour to the person that they are running for. Make sure that you're running items that are at least 3 levels higher than what you can currently get at your level. This will prevent you from confusing your items with other players' items, as well as ensure that you are getting your money's worth per hour, considering the price of running is half the mid-price of the completed full stack traded at Chronopolis. The more level distance between you and the player that you run for means that the more money that you make back per hour, because it's a more valuable service for them, the item costs more, and the less time it will take for them to hit a very high level or acquire crafting items in bulk. If you are interested in talking about or trying any of these strategies, please join us at the Brighter Bears Discord. Soon we will be starting weekly party farms across the map, starting in Hopeport and expanding to other chapters as I release more guides. At Brighter Bears, we are really trying to push content and activities that give people more than just social incentives to play together. We want strategic incentives to play together. I will be hosting these weekly events and coordinating them live on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/weatherbears. And you can join in on all the fun by hopping in Brighter Bears Discord, which is linked in the description. I also want to take a moment to give a shout out to Demonly, who runs Adothria.com. There's been a service tag on the website for a while now that I've been using with some success in the past, and he received my feedback on how to make adjustments so that running as a service can be better communicated on the site. So I'm really looking forward to what comes of the service revamp there and doing a video to explain it all. As I touched on a bit earlier in this video, I also recently got in touch with the kind folks over at the Brighter Shores Wiki Discord about wanting to undertake the project of figuring out a standardized way to calculate and communicate actions per hour within their calculators so we can really figure out route efficacy as a community. If this kind of project interests you, the best way that you can get access to it is to support me and to support my Twitch channel financially. If you subscribe, you get access to all of the projects I'm working on, all the behind-the-scene math, all of the conversations that happen before these videos get released, as well, of course, as the standard tiered emotes to troll around with on Twitch. Otherwise, you can catch everything that I make a little bit later here on YouTube, on Twitch, in the Brighter Bears Discord, in the Brighter Shores Wikipedia Discord. I'm kind of just all over the place. If you have thoughts and opinions on more effective or viable running routes in Hopeport or different party farming operations in Hopeport, I want to hear about it. Seriously. Please. Like and subscribe here on YouTube and on my Twitch if this is the kind of multiplayer Brighter Shores content and community engagement you want to start to see, and thank you so much for watching.